Health Nuts, episode 38.
You're listening to Health Nuts with Dr. Chris Carr. Making lifestyle changes is hard for many people, and not knowing what to do or how to do it makes the task all the more daunting. Here at Health Nuts, we focus on helping you live a fuller life by discussing everyday health issues and exploring breakthrough solutions on how to overcome them. And now, here's your host, Dr. Chris Carr.
Welcome back to another episode of Health Nuts. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Carr, and today I have an awesome guest for you coming all the way from Hamburg, Germany, and that is one Dr. Mark Styers. He's originally from Syracuse, New York, and currently lives in Hamburg. He graduated in 1999 from Life University in Atlanta with a Doctor of Chiropractic degree. In 2000, he was appointed to the board of the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association. Dr. Styers was president of the World Chiropractic Alliance in Germany and served on the board of the World Chiropractic Alliance from 2003 to 2005. He is the director of the American Institute of Chiropractic in Germany. And I found him watching one of his Facebook Lives that he was talking about. And today is going to be a topic called Kaizen, which is going to be going over mindset and never-ending how we can work on improving your mindset, and there's never an end game with it. So, Dr. Mark, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
I gotta say, I'm really impressed, man. That you didn't, you did some research on me and knew all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Gotta love the internet.
I don't know if you read some of the propaganda, but yeah,
hey,
there's the good and the bad and the ugly with everybody. You know what I mean?
Hey, but, it is what. It is what it is. There's propaganda out there, and I'm not one to follow suit with what's out there, but I loved your message from the other day, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share today. Before I get there, I was like, just a little bit more intro about yourself. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, what I wanted to ask you, I started hearing you tell about me, and then you cut off for like a minute, so I don't know if you asked me a question.
I did not.
Ah, okay. So, what can I tell you about myself? That song from Sting pops into my mind. I'm an illegal alien living in New York. I'm a legal alien living in northern Germany.
And
yeah, it's always funny when I talk to Germans. You know, they want to know because I'm from New York. Why are you here? You know, and so if how do I explain that? I don't know. I guess when I was in the military, I shopped the world for the perfect place. And I say, there is no perfect place. Every place in the world has good and bad. You know, I ended up here because it just kind of fit the best for me. I'm very structured and organized and squared away. And it really fits with the German disciplined, structured, hierarchical life. You know, it's kind of like... It's kind of like the military for all civilians, the way life is. Very structured. People are very disciplined.
now you've got 20 plus years, close to 20 plus years of experience under your belt now.
Well, yeah, almost. I mean, I was a patient for 18 years before I became a chiropractor. And you asked me before, you wanted me to tell the story. And I wondered, how far back did you want me to go? When I was 12 years old, my spine was broken for the first time, and I was paralyzed from the waist down. And my parents were divorced. And, you know, it was a time when they really didn't like each other, and it was all, thank you, honey. And my mother brought me to an orthopedic surgeon. He told me I might spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. So I got home and called my father crying, and he just came over to my house like the former Marine he was and threw me over his shoulder and brought me into the chiropractic office of Dr. Donald Schaefer. And this guy was 6'7", 280 pounds.
Oh, wow.
He had been a sergeant in the Marine Corps that landed in Normandy and made it all the way through. And was one of that group that went to chiropractic college on the GI Bill. And yeah, I don't tell people this story very often, but what's interesting is a lot of people think I don't talk to people about this, but this guy was not like, and my father was a former Marine, and this guy wore a lab coat. He graduated from New York Chiropractic College. He hooked people up to machines. My father laid me on his table. It was the scariest thing ever happened in my life. I felt like he broke every bone in my spine, and he was so big.
Wow.
His hand.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm big now. I'm 6'5", 245. So I thought I always remember this profound experience. This guy was the biggest, scariest guy. I grew up in a little town in Baldwinsville, New York, outside of Syracuse, actually. Syracuse is a metropolis from where I was born. Anyways, this guy adjusted me, and it scared the hell out of me. I got to tell you, there was no talking to me. Like a Marine, I didn't have any rank, so I didn't validate any talking, and he just picked me up and stood me up and said, "Wednesday, 3:00." And I said, "Yes, sir." That was my whole talk.
That was it.
Yeah, one of the things that bothers me about our profession is all of this groupthink, dividing people into camps of technique and philosophy and schools. And I never bought into any of that. I stayed away from all of the cliquey little, I don't join any groups. I'm not a joiner of groups. I think every human being that becomes a doctor is free to choose their own path and how to practice, that this was a profound experience in my life, right? And it changed my life. But for me, it's also a perfect example of how I never wanted to practice. Mm. This guy changed my life because if I'd have been sent to 100 chiropractors, who knows if more than one of them would have had the courage to adjust me with a broken spine. Mm-hmm. Do you understand what I mean? Regardless of technique, philosophy, what group you belong to, the difference was this guy just had huge cojones. He just had no fear of anything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He went through 4 or 5 years of war, the worst horror that anybody can imagine. In a little town, I never knew what chiropractic was. And the interesting thing was, years later, when I was in the military in active duty, I broke another bone in my spine, and I went to the Portsmouth Naval Hospital. I was in the U.S. Navy on the East Coast. I went to the Naval Hospital, and I remember just thinking I need an adjustment. And a medical surgeon told me for the first time that chiropractic wasn't a part of medicine. I never knew. Like I said, this Doc Schaefer, I went there every Wednesday at 3:00, and he adjusted me and kept me walking. But he never talked to me because I didn't even have a rank. I was just a kid. He talked to my father. So all I knew was that I wanted an adjustment, and so I just went to the hospital to get an adjustment. Right. How funny is that?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people think you've got to have this magical health talk. And, I think about this French philosopher who said 50% of the healing is a presence in the room. This exemplified Doc Schaefer. Mm-hmm. Doc Schaefer was one of the most respected, feared men in the town I grew up in. This was a huge mountain of a man. And people just knew him as Doc Schaefer, not chiropractor.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So there wasn't any philosophy. There wasn't any talk. It was just like whatever Doc Schaefer said, everybody did. You know what I mean? And that was my beginning of chiropractic. And it wasn't until years and years later, I went to this chiropractor that, like I said, I'm 6'5", I'm 245, I'm pretty big and strong. And I went to this tiny little guy that was recommended to me. He was like 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing. And I remember laying on his table and him telling me, "I can't adjust you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you're contracting every muscle in your body and I'm not strong enough." Because Doc Schaefer was so big and strong for years, I got adjusted and I resisted. You know what I mean? Yeah. And some people only go through that for a little while. I think about that. I had years of going in and like having my spine raped. Do you know what I mean? Where I resisted with every muscle. Yeah, and it was the first. the first time I ever got an adjustment where it actually felt kind of nice, because I just didn't understand. This guy was from another generation, and I just did what I was told. And that changed me. This little chiropractor, this little guy, he talked to me about a little bit about what chiropractic was. And still, I always say, if you ask 100 patients in an office what chiropractic is, you probably get 100 different answers. To me, chiropractors were like superheroes. I didn't read Superman comics or Batman comics. To me, Doc Schaefer could rip Superman's head off. So the first time I ever heard philosophy of chiropractic was in school. And it was so overwhelming to me. I remember laughing hysterically that first day of philosophy class. And the professor looking at me like I was kind of being a disruptive force, because I wasn't laughing at him. I was almost laughing at this amazing thing that had been going on in my whole life. I never really understood it. Nobody ever really explained it. There's a metaphor that says there's two ways you can motivate a human being, right? The carrot or the bulldog. Mm-hmm. I never had the carrot. I always had the bulldog, because Doc Schaefer just told me, if you want to walk for the rest of your life, you just got to get adjusted once a week. Mm-hmm. So, most people aren't presented with those kind of options. If you want to walk, get adjusted once a week. Okay.
Just come in the one time, or just come in every single week at the same time, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah, and you asked me about the theme, and I said this word Kaizen, mm-hmm. This Japanese word that means constant, never-ending improvement. I try to live my life by that, the same way I try to inspire other doctors and patients to live their life by that one simple thing. Because a lot of people think change has to be radical and massive, but I always say to people, look, we're pretty much all the same. We're lazy people. We don't really want to do much. It takes an effort for all of us to get out of bed in the morning. There's like a millisecond when we wake up, especially when it's cold and dark, that really we're like 99.9% all the same. The differences in human beings is so minute that it's almost statistically irrelevant. No matter how big we are, what size we are, what color, what race, as human beings, we're almost exactly the same. Right?
Yeah. We're a hell of a lot more alike than we are different.
So we're all lazy, and a little tiny bit of change, a little tiny bit every day, over time is a mountain of change. But when people want to make change in their lives, in their health, doing different things with food, with exercise, with sleep, with mental health, with chiropractic, that I've noticed that over my years, when people don't make change, because a lot of them mentally are thinking it's kind of an all or nothing game, when health is just about balance. Mm-hmm. And so this is my message. You have this podcast in America, right?
Correct.
And I don't often get to speak to Americans, so I don't know if they take to my message. I'd say I'm a little bit more militant with Germans, because I can just, my assistants or other people can go, well, he's American. We're a little bit louder, a little more in your face. So, I don't know how Americans would take to my message, because I've been practicing here for so many years, Well,
I enjoyed it. Some of the takeaways from earlier in the week that when I was on, that kind of struck a chord. And if you could kind of go into some of those topics from that in regard to the mindset, and maybe the mindset, even what they need to, somebody who might be sick and tired of being sick and tired. Not even their health.
Okay. You listened to that video. Yeah. I told that story that when I first got in practice, when a doctor goes to school, and I don't know if it's, lay people or doctors that listen to your message on your podcast, but
It's primarily patience.
Yeah, and I speak the same message to everybody because we're all humans.
Right.
And what most average people don't know is that doctors, I don't know the numbers in America, but I assume they're very similar to Germany, is that doctors and nurses and therapists and people that work in healthcare generally are dying off 15 to 20 years before the average population because they spend so much energy caring for other people that they don't take care of themselves. And I think this is very true of a lot of American people I know that are very giving, loving people. You know, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, people that want to give of themselves. And I always say, if you want to be around to give to people for a long time, you have to take care of yourself. And it all has to do with motivation. I'm reading this really interesting book right now by Jordan Peterson. Have you heard of this guy?
I have not.
He's a psychological professor from the University of Toronto that's going viral all over the world, YouTube. He wrote a book called The 12 Steps of Life. And it's interesting hearing things from a psychologist standpoint. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a chiropractor. And so I have the same mental disorder as all the rest of the sheeple on the planet, you know, trying to figure out why we do stuff, why we think things a certain way. But I'm going to be 50 in a few months, and my years on this planet has taught me one thing, is that when you break down human beings, like I said earlier, we're pretty much all the same. But we live in a world where people are taught to divide. You know, the British called it back in the 10th century, the Great Game. You know, you get these people hating those people and these people hating those people. And then there's a small handful of people that just take over everything. And it's never been more apparent than in the world we live in now, because all of the technology has connected people and just, you know, given people 10,000 more reasons to be collectively miserable instead of deciding that this is the easiest time in human history to be alive. It's never been easier in the entire history of the planet Earth for a man or a woman to live. You know what I mean? Nobody's trying to kill me. Nobody's trying to, you know, take the animals in my garden that aren't out there to eat and feed their family. And at the same time, we've never been more sick and miserable. So back to your original point, when I first started in practice, I decided that my history form was going to contain things that I always thought about in school, but, you know, you have to go through education and do that standardized thing. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I was a patient for so many years that I still to this day think of everything from a patient standpoint. Do you understand what I mean? And I always wondered why doctors didn't ask me certain things. And I don't know where it was that stimulated me, but when I first opened up my first history form, the first question that was right below their name and address was, are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? And the thing that shocked me the most is even teenagers checked yes. Everybody checked yes. I remember saying to my wife when I first made up the form, I was kind of giggling, and I said, I wonder how many people would actually check yes on this question.
And lo and behold.
Yeah, the shocking thing was everybody checked yes. Mm-hmm. So after a year in practice, I hired a sociologist. I think it was called a sociologist. I don't know how it translates into English. But it was somebody that comes in and evaluates what people think about what you do, right? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to know how I was doing on educating my patients on chiropractic. Oh, God, you should never do this. Because what I realized was not one of my patients could really give a really good explanation of what chiropractic was. Mm-hmm. And I had to think about this for a few days. And I realized that I was in the early phases of my career, and I was still trying to force my motivation on other people. I just have to laugh at that, because I think every human being, when they get to a certain age, they realize that control is an illusion. And what motivates every human being is whatever they decide motivates them, right? And I had to think about myself that I've been going to a chiropractor by the time I started chiropractic school for nearly 20 years. And the only thing I really knew about chiropractic was if I got adjusted every week, I could walk. Mm-hmm. So I started to think, do I care why people get adjusted? And I realized I don't care, not even a little bit, that what difference does it make why people do things as long as they're bettering themselves, right? Why do people eat healthy food? Why do people go to the gym? Why do people sleep a good night's sleep? Why do people think more good thoughts than bad? Why do people get adjusted? Who cares? As long as they do it, right?
Right.
And I think the big tragedy in life is, at least in the Western world, we live in a world where the most important things in life aren't taught in school. And what I think that is, what I teach my children is two things that aren't taught in school that matter most in our lives. What is health and what is money? So I don't want to go down that road about what money is. Most people think currency is money. It's not. But this is a health nut website, not a financial website. And but these two fundamental things that are the most important things in our lives, right? And I don't do anything. I don't work for money, right? But we all live in the same world. We have to make a living and pay our bills. Mm-hmm. And but it shouldn't be a motivation. It should be a result, right? I always tell young people, young teenagers, if you want to be, when you think about your life in the future, you should thinking about a career as what your day is going to be like. You know, are you going to be in a cubicle, or are you going to be around people? Are you going to feel like a caged animal? You know, what is your day going to be like? And if you just choose something in your life that you really love and make it your work, you'll always be happy. And if you're really focused and dedicated, money will come to you, because money is a result of being successful. At least I will say in my life, everybody that I know that has been motivated by money is never happy. And people that are motivated by principle and purpose are very happy, and they're all very successful. So, you know, I feel blessed that I chose something that I love to do. And after I chose it, then I found out that there's actually principles and purpose behind it, which I didn't know. And like I said, I told that story earlier. I think I've only told that story ever once before. Last year, I got invited to speak at a conference in Brussels, Belgium. And I said, this is my coming out, because I never really told this story. Most people think that some principled subluxation-based person changed my life, which couldn't be further from the truth.
Not at all.
But the big thing is, does it matter?
No.
And these are the things. I think my big advantage of being a doctor is I'm not that smart. I'm like middle of the line intelligent, but my focus and discipline far exceeds everybody else. You know, school was a lot harder for me to get through, but I think what's easy for me when I say that is I'm very simple-minded. So I think in very simple terms, and same thing with food. You know, people come to my house, and I'm a very good cook. My wife's a very good cook. And people ask me, how did you learn how to cook? And I say, I never learned how to cook. I learned what I like to eat, and I learned how to reproduce that. And I think that what I like to eat, most people would like it. You know, if you want to give me like pickled monkey balls, that's not really my thing.
Sure?
There's like a small percentage of people that want to eat some really weird stuff, right? And I'm not one of those. So I'm kind of like, I think of that in every area of my life, in health, in healthcare, in life, with exercise, with food, with chiropractic. Mm-hmm. What I like, most people would like, not everybody. So I think the thing that makes life easy for me is that you live exactly at the same level that you believe and you work, right? what I'm offering to people in my life, to other doctors, to patients, is exactly the bar that I set. I set a very high bar for myself, right? Because I'm on a path of constant, never-ending improvement. And, I'm training doctors, and then people always ask me, how do you motivate them? And I say, I don't motivate anybody. I'm just showing people the path that I'm on. And here you go. If you want to come with me,
here's your
roadmap. Yeah, it's the same thing that I want for my wife and children, for my friends, that I'm not offering anybody in my life anything different that I don't want for myself. And because I was adjusted and I was a regular chiropractic patient for 18 years, and food and exercise was a big thing for me my whole life, my bar, my standard is pretty high. So, like I said, not every single person on the planet is going to want that, but that's all I have. Right.
What are some steps you've used, or some steps you teach to for success, or someone who's maybe struggling? What are some things you tell them to do?
Very simple. And you asked me about these 3 basic things, and I'd say one is Kaizen.
Mm-hmm.
Kaizen, constant, never-ending improvement. The second thing is the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. So just what I said to you is I always tell people when they're struggling. I remember some very old doctor said this to me about 30 years ago. Or no, it wasn't that long ago. I think when I was in school in 1995, 96, this old doctor said to me, everything that's wrong with the practice is inside of you. And I think about things that are said to me by older folks a lot, because there's usually a lot of wisdom in that. A lot of people don't realize that we lose out on the wisdom from older folks, and I kind of had an innate sense of that when I was younger. So I gain a lot of wisdom from other people's experience, which is the true definition of wisdom, is learning from someone else's experience. So what I'm always telling people is keeping it simple, of this one thing, that everything that's wrong with you, or everything that's wrong with your office, with your life, with a business, with anything, first starts with ourselves, right? So it doesn't matter if someone's a doctor, they're a lawyer, they're a shop owner, a nanny, a nurse, that people's perception and how we perceive the world, really, when you look at life, I mean, come on, if we're talking about people in the Western world, we're all the same. We're lazy, spoiled, rich people. I mean, when you think the amount of people on the planet that go to the bathroom and drink out of the same water, if you can turn the water on and you have a roof over your head and nobody's trying to kill you, you're rich. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what kind of car you drive. And I think that this is perspective, right?
Yeah.
I live in Hamburg, Germany, which is the richest city in Europe, and the wealth that is around me, I never knew existed. I grew up in a really, I didn't grow up in a ghetto, right? But I grew up in just a crappy little central New York town. And I hate to say crappy, but I always say to people, it's a great place to be from. And which is kind of mean, because my family still lives there. I still have a lot of family and friends there. But for me, it's a great place to be from, because the quality of life that I have is when I go back to the area which you live, what I grew up in, the Northeast, I feel like I'm stepping back in time 25 years. So sometimes I'm driving home in my car, and I don't say that to be mean. I say that my level of gratefulness is at the level of humor. Like sometimes I'm driving home in my car and I just start laughing hysterically, because I think to myself, I'm driving home in a car that costs more than the house I grew up in. Where did this life come from? You know what I mean?
It was a life that you produced, that you put work into. It wasn't given to you.
Yeah, and it's hard to explain. It's just I've never been a materialistic person. I always say anything in my life that I have that's not a human being. I don't care. I could get rid of it tomorrow. I don't get attached to material stuff, you know. It's nice to have, but I don't really care about it. I care about human beings more. You know, you can always replace stuff. You can always buy another car, buy another house, buy multiple houses, multiple cars, but you can't replace people in your life, no. Which is always some people call it my call to action. Some people call it my call to arms in a military metaphor. Not that I'm calling anybody to fight or do anything violent, but to me, the biggest sadness for me on the planet is that it's not war. It's not, you know, chemical food, what they're dumping on us in the air, because all of that is really immaterial. What really matters is how we take care of ourselves, because we have it within us to fight off anything. There's never been a disease that's occurred in nature, that's been designed at the lab in Fort Detrick, Maryland. I probably shouldn't say that. That kills 100% of people. I mean, if you think about the plague, it wiped out like a third of the population. Did the other 2/3 not get exposed? Or were their systems strong enough to go, no, thank you.
Yeah, I don't need that.
And, you know, I did this. You saw these a Facebook video or two I did. I just discovered how to press a Facebook button a couple of weeks ago. And I did a Facebook video the other day with my assistants. I had this old woman come into my office who's over 80 years old. She fell off her bed and it scared the hell out of her. And when she came in, she was all paranoid and I was just laughing. And she's almost in tears asking one of my CAs, you know, how can he be laughing at me? And I said, because you're fine. I said, you're stronger than most 40-year-olds, you know, which is ironic because a few years ago, she came into my practice and she hadn't been able to leave the house by herself without help in 25 years.
Wow.
So I'm doing this video and I try not to keep this stuff in my head because I'm a man and we're so easily distracted that I don't really want to talk to people. I have an assistant next to me all the time because sometimes I say bad words or I'm mean or whatever, because Germans are very sensitive and I'm just like a kid in a candy store, you know? So this woman, I found out from my assistants, we're making this video just a couple days ago. She couldn't leave. She was afraid to go 30 meters from her house. 30 meters. Which was amazing. And I remember one day after, I don't know, 6 or 8 months of her doing Kaizen, which is constant, never-ending improvement, the path I put people on, which is getting them to eat really good food, exercise. Now, this was a woman nearing 80 years old, okay? To give you the level of brutality I put some old people through. Today, and every day of her life, today, she does 100 push-ups, not off her knees. An 80-year-old woman, push-ups,
it's unheard of.
And push-ups and planking and 8 other movements every day. Okay. So I remember this one day she came in and she was acting all giddy, and I was like, you know, what's going on with the old girl? You know, did she lose her mind? And one of my assistants said, she came here today by herself. And I said, oh, is that a thing? And she said, yeah, she usually has somebody bring her here. And I said, I didn't know because I have a couple big open adjusting rooms and I'm in the back and I don't see who's bringing people in the front.
Right.
And I do these healing fests twice a year where I take people to a different environment. It's kind of like I call it a healing fest because I'm pushing people to get outside their comfort zone and wherever they are at. And this woman, it was really, first of all, she'd never been on a jet airplane, believe it or not. So I told her to meet me at the airport early, like an hour before the flight. And of course, I'm more German than the Germans. I get there an hour and a half before, and she's already been there for 10 minutes. So I used to do this in the mountain, and now that I'm older, I'm going to the beach. So I took her to Majorca, and I really pushed her physically. But I do it in a very gentle way, not in a militant way. I used to do that, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little better with dealing with normal humans that aren't like me.
Scaled it down a little bit.
Yeah. It took, 18 years, but I'm a little softer now, not completely soft around the edges, but this was like a real, when this happened the other day, it would just struck me as funny because now at my age, a year or two doesn't seem like that much. You know what I mean? When a patient's just been coming in for a year or two, it's like, it doesn't seem that much. I have many people I've been taking care of for 15 years or more. So, but it was amazing that this laughter came out of me because I knew she'd fallen off the bed. And I just had a sense. Most 80-year-old women fall down. They could die, right? And I'm laughing at this woman. She's like, why are you laughing? I said, because this is what health is. You're learning something different. That she spent the last 2 years, focused on this, what I'm telling people, Kaizen. And she's so strong. I laid her on a table and she had a couple of ribs out of place and they hurt. I put everything back in place. And on an 80-year-old woman, a guy that's 6'5", 245, I'm trying to tread lightly, because she's in pain. She's got some things out of place. And the hugs this woman was giving me after was amazing, That's something you can't really buy, the appreciation. And she's been appreciative of so much, but she really had this fear in her head that she was telling my assistants later. Quite a few of her friends in the last 10 years have had a trauma and been dead within a year. So, yeah, I'm not at that age yet. I'm just turning 50 this year, and I still feel like I'm 20. Although now that I started looking myself on Facebook, I can't believe how old and fat that I look. I got like 2-3 chins.
It adds a good 20 or 30 pounds to you, right?
Yeah, but skinny people never say that. No, but it's I think life is simple and health is simple if you break it down to really easy to understand things. Because it's something I've been saying to people for about maybe 4 or 5 years now. Because I've been doing this almost 20 years and I feel like I'm almost good at it. I'm still working on it. It's always interesting when I tell a patient that I've been working on for 15 years, like I can't believe they come to me because the guy that started them up, I wouldn't let him work on me today. And they look at me strange. And I tell them, look, I am only teaching you what I believe. I mean, I have this thing up on my wall. I told you, I'm going to send you a picture tomorrow when I go in the office. I'll send it to you. That one of my CAs had this made for me because I speak about this all the time. Have these Japanese characters made with the word Kaizen on the top. So I say to people, look, I'm not just saying that. It's not a sales pitch. It's how I live my life.
Right.
So when people come in, I'm just offering them how I'm trying to live through life, and we're pretty much all the same. I don't know if you're dealing with this in the States at all. One of my biggest challenges with German folks is somewhere along their lives, they've been taught that perfection is a possibility. And I always giggle and I say, I'm lucky I grew up in a town of mostly pessimists because I don't think anybody I grew up with ever thought that perfection was achievable. I don't know about you. Did you grow up in Pittsburgh?
I did.
I actually like Pittsburgh. I've been there a few times. I have some friends there. Let me give a shout out to Dr. Jeff Ludwig. And I told him I was going to be on your podcast today, so I hope he's listening. I hope you guys connect because he lived a couple of houses away from me in school. He was a school teacher before he became a chiropractor. Just an amazing human being. I haven't seen him in almost 20 years, but I can imagine that he is an amazing, amazing chiropractor because he has such a good soul. And for me, that's what matters most when you go to a doctor of anything, a dentist, chiropractor, a medical doctor, a massage therapist, a physical therapist. To me, what matters the most is what's inside the human being, not what outfit they wear or, what piece of paper is hanging on the wall, but how they are as people.
Yeah.
Because that makes the biggest difference to me.
Yeah, I love the message that you shared with being true to yourself and being congruent throughout your life. I think a lot of times people get stuck trying to be something that they're not, or trying to please somebody else in their life, and that takes away from them from their ultimate success at some point as well. So I love that share.
Well, I would never use the word congruent, or I would never use the words right or wrong. I think we put too many rules on ourselves and judge ourselves and allow ourselves to be put in groups. And I think what's at the core of this, what I tell German doctors is this disease they have called "I want people to like me" itis. I tell people every day, if you want a friend, buy a dog. Too many people live their life and make decisions on what other people might think of them. And I have to say, I think my gift in life is I just don't care. I don't want people to not like me, but I would pick my nose in front of my mother if it itched. I don't know where this came from. It might have just come from having overbearing, much stronger people around me when I was young and have to internalize things in my mind that it's kind of like organized sports. I was never a great team player on anything because I really don't care. The only person I'm in competition with is me. I just want to be better than I was yesterday. And so I have to say I disagree with that word congruent because it's more external than internal. Does that make sense, or am I just being mean?
No, not at all. Probably what I was thinking is that as us being in the chiropractic field, if we're teaching somebody about health and then we're at home, smoking and drinking each and every night, then we're not really being congruent with our message. That's kind of
but I have to say this: we're also human. So, I had a day today. We're having a heat wave in Hamburg. Hamburg, Germany is like a temperate climate. It never gets really hot.
Yeah.
Never gets really cold. But the last week, it's been like close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which I'm just not used to here, So on the way home, I stopped at a Shell gas station, and I literally injectables. And we all do things that are bad for us, right? We want to eat something, drink something. How often do I do this? I don't know, once in a while. It's strange. It's like a ritual because me and my wife don't really drink. We don't go out. And I started doing this some years ago as like a ritual when I stopped the gas station, believe it or not. I know it sounds really freaky, doesn't it? But
I've never heard of it.
The reason I'm saying this, it's different in Europe. You can buy actually a cocktail at the gas station. And so I'm not going to admit on air I was drinking it while driving, but I did buy it there. Anyways, my point being is we all do things that are bad for us. The question is, are you doing all these things that are good for you? So I was talking to this woman today about eating food, and she's thinking food like an all or nothing thing. And I said to her, look, she's like, how do you do it? And I said, do what? She said, be so disciplined with eating. I said, honey, I haven't seen, veins in my abs in many years. I said, I'm really fit. I exercise. I eat really good food. But I said, you know what? When I want to eat a pizza, I eat the whole thing. I don't deprive myself because I put really good things in. So when I want to eat something bad,
right.
And this is the thing, health is about balance, right? So, I think that because we live in a world where people aren't taught health, with food especially, maybe it's more challenging in America. I don't have this challenge as much with Germans because most of them understand food a lot better. And the chemicals aren't as big of a challenge for me. Like, I very rarely have a patient come in that drinks cola every day. Very rarely. Like in America, almost everybody I know drinks cola like daily. They don't understand that that's phosphoric acid, and it's literally eating their bone structure. I mean, I taught my kids when they were very young that has the same biochemical structure of horse pee. Phosphoric acid. It's, if you put horse pee under a microscope, and
that's a true statement.
Yeah. I did learn a few things in biochem. I don't know about you, but I said that to my kids when they were really young to put it in their head. So they would go to, when they were younger, they're teenagers now, and they would go to a party because we didn't have cola in our house. And I'd tell them, look, once in a while you can drink that crap, but you can't live on it. So I remember my kids when they were young, before they're going to a party, they would ask me, Papa, can we drink some horse piss at the party? And, it was funny. Sometimes they said that to me while at a party, while I was there, in front of the other parents. And they're going, what? Horse piss? I'm like, yeah, that's what that stuff is, really. It's just a little sweeter. I remember one party, my son comes home and he goes, Papa, I drank 11 Dr. Peppers. I'm like, good for you. You're probably not going to sleep for 2 days now. And then you'll learn your lesson. And it'll probably be 10 years before you ever want to drink that again. Well, so the point is about health is that everybody needs to set their own standard and not worry about other people judging themselves against us. I'm not going to hold myself up and say, you have to do this because I'm here. No, I tell people this is my standard and I'm human, right? Once in a while, I want to eat a Big Mac because I like them. Are they good for me? No, they're just as bad as drinking horse pee. But if you live on that stuff, you'll probably destroy your liver. Yeah. I always tell my assistants, every couple of months I go and eat some nasty stuff and it rips apart my stomach, and then like an hour later, I'm like, why did I do that? And then like a few months later, I forget. And the young women that work for me go, why do you do that? And I'm like, I'm a man. Yeah. And men, we do stupid stuff over and over again. Weird. And they go, why? I'm like, I don't know. Because we're not women. Yeah, we don't have as much blood flow to our brain.
Well, Doc, before I let you go, one question. Best advice you ever got, what was it?
You're like my kids. My kids always want me to rank everything. Mm-hmm. What's the number one song? What's your favorite meal?
I got to keep it on topic. The audience is used to hearing these types of questions.
Yeah, I can't say I have best advice ever in my life. I get advice all the time. Just last weekend, and I don't know which of my Facebook videos you watched, but last weekend I did a Facebook video with an old Frenchman named 1971. He's been in clinical practice almost as long as I've been alive. And I brought a guy that was trained as a trauma surgeon down with me that I turned into a chiropractor. And we sat and listened to him. And I get advice all the time, and I listen to all of it, especially when it's coming from older people. So I know you want me to tell you, I'm just trying to think about all the wisdom I got from him last weekend because, well, when I first came to Germany, I feel like I learned from this wonderful man, Dr. John Paul Pianta, how to be a human being. I grew up in a house with my father, who was a former Marine. We were more like cavemen, and I spent some time in the military when I got out of high school, and I didn't know etiquette things, right? I remember the first time I'm in Dr. Pianta's office, and I reached out to shake a woman's hand, and Pianta says to me, Mark, You cannot shake a woman's hand or a man's hand when your other hand is in your pocket. And I said, really? He said, yes. I didn't know that. Nobody ever taught me that, you know. I didn't know how to use all the underwear. So I would say the best advice I've gotten later in my life are little etiquette things like here where I live, and it's a different world, you know. It's soft, and everybody's concerned about manners. And I'm like an animal. When I eat food, I spill it on me. I'm still kind of a savage. So I would say the etiquette things, like you would dress the woman first, right? Waiter comes to table you're on. The woman gets the menu first, you know. If you say hello, and we see another couple, I need to address the woman first, right? And these don't seem like big life advice things, but were things that nobody ever taught me. I didn't grow up that way, you know. I knew how to hunt and fish. Those are things that'll, you know, help you survive it doesn't really have any bearing on kind of the life I live now, but I would say the best advice things that I'm thinking when you ask that, I can't say specific because there's so many, but
chivalry is never a bad one.
Yeah, and no, I'm not even saying chivalry. I'm just talking about like I don't want to say manners because I don't think that I was ever bad mannered. Just kind of etiquette things of how to be normal. You know, when you go into a place and there's multiple forks and knives and spoons on the table. I didn't grow up like that. So I'll shorten it down to my best life advice is just listening to wisdom from older people. Some are batshit crazy, but you know, people are people. But I always think if somebody's been on this planet 70 years or more, they probably have something to tell me that I can benefit from, you know?
Completely
and
agree.
When I was 22, 23, I thought I knew everything. It wasn't until I hit 40 that I realized I really don't know anything, you know?
For somebody who's out there, they're trying to find you. How do they do it?
Find me.
So you're local. So where do they find on Facebook, or what's the best way if they want to watch more of your Facebook lives like I did?
You mean on social media or internet?
Yeah, your website.
Well, they could just type my name into Google, Mark Styers, MarkStyers.
Awesome. And
I know that there's a bunch of us. There's quite a few Mark Styers in America, but yeah, I don't think there's more than one of me in Hamburg, Germany.
It's pretty common name in the U.S.
No. It's not common. My grandfather had 7 brothers. They were from Austria. They had many kids. My dad is the youngest of 13. And the original spelling of our name from Austria was Steyr, Steyr. They changed the spelling of the name, I don't know how many decades ago, to Steyers. So all Styers in America are all one big family.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, because it's a made-up name. And there's not that many of us,
No.
You know. It's not like Smith or Thompson or some name like that, but I have looked up my name on Google when Google first started to be a thing, and I was amazed that there's like 40 or 50 Mark Styers in the United States.
Huh.
It shocked me a little, only because the name is made up, just so Americans could pronounce it.
Can enunciate it. Well, Doc, I appreciate you coming on and giving back today.
Well, I just hope that this was supposed to be me talking a lot, because I think I talked the whole time, and yeah. Well, I had a lot of coffee today.
Yeah.
It was very hot,
yeah.
And I drank just a tiny little Jack Daniels and ginger ale on the way home, so I didn't get road rage from all the horrible traffic.
Well, I appreciate the message. And I know the audience will too. And to the audience, I'll put all of his, I'll put the show notes. I'll put his social media in the show notes. So if you ever want to hook up, you have any questions on the good doc in Hamburg, you can get hold of him.
Well, I really appreciate you inviting me on. I think this is the first time I've done any kind of interview with anybody in the United States. I get asked all the time from countries all over the world, but I haven't been asked to do anything in social media in America in a while.
There's always a first. I'm glad I was able to be the first one.
Well, I'm glad you asked me, Chris, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. To the audience, I'll look forward to talking to you all next week. Have a great week. Bye now.
So, you've heard from the experts yourself this episode and have gotten some golden nuggets on health. There is so much more to come and so much more to learn. Head on over to pghcw.com. Again, that's pghcw.com, and sign up for our newsletter where you'll receive free info on how to get and stay healthy. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Health Nuts with Dr. Chris Carr. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and please leave a review.